Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
And thank you for joining our discussion today about the Creator's compass. Our Creator by nature is a master mathematician, where all creation is built upon his golden ratio and sacred geometry, based on patterns and cycles, beginnings and endings. As part of his patterns and cycles, the Creator uses the compass directions as reference points for his architecture. For example, in Genesis 1, a day starts when the sun rises in the east, traveling through the day towards the west, coming around in its cycle to east again when the next day begins anew at its dawning. The 4 spatial compass points in the Bible are rich in meaning. The Most High assigned each with specific functions and orders of operation. Therefore, understanding their place in the creational circuit of the Most High can help us decipher biblical passages and concepts. So this brings us to
The East.
the East. So the concept of the East holds substantial significance throughout the Bible, symbolizing both geographical direction and spiritual metaphor. Throughout Scripture, the direction of East is where our Creator begins his cycles and circuits, symbolizing new beginnings, divine encounters, and enlightenment. Using the spatial direction of East as the main point of orientation for all that he fashions, physically and spiritually. In the Western world, we orient ourselves by facing north, but in biblical times, the East was considered the primary direction for orientation. In fact, the Orient refers to the East, while the Occident refers to the West. So we have Orient and Occident, East and West. The Hebrew word for East is kadem, which means before or front. The west is behind, and the right hand is south, and north is the left hand. In ancient Near East culture, certain directions held symbolic meanings. East was the synonym for ancient or the distant past. This cultural orientation was adapted and transformed in ancient Israel into a cosmic geography wherein Yahuwah occupied the utmost east. The east began to symbolize prophetic expectations, the divine promise, and the origin of life.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 8. And Eloah planted a garden in Eden according to the east, and he put there the man whom he shaped.
Now the word garden in Hebrew is gan, and means an enclosure, an enclosed garden, figuratively a bride, and it forms a root from which all ideas of a circuit stem from. Defined as a sphere, that which has protective walls, which encloses, surrounds, or covers all parts. That which forms the enclosure of a thing, limits a thing, and protects it. In the same fashion that a sheath encloses, limits, and protects its blade. Also, a complete circuit. Now, Eden is derived from the Aramaic word Aden, which is from the root word corresponding to time, a set time, a year. Thus, the Garden of Eden, or Gan Eden, is the garden of set times, a year garden. Now, from the Anchor Bible Dictionary, Volume 2, we read, quote, "The garden in Genesis 2 through 3, it is probably meant to be understood primarily as a dwelling place of the Creator, rather than simply a place of human habitation. The main feature of the Garden of God theme is the presence of the deity, The divine council meets there, and decrees of cosmic importance are issued. Eloah's dwelling place is also called Far Moed, or appointed assembly, unquote. So the testimony and continual witness of this actual time garden is set by the lights of heaven, where they record the way back to meeting with Eloah. In the eastern part of Eden, the Creator planted a hedged-in garden where he would conduct his divine counsel, placing a man into this paradise so that he might take care of it. That was until the day in which Hillel, also known as Lucifer, convinced Kava, Eve, that she and Adam should meet with him instead of Yahuwah. This was fornication in the eyes of the Most High, removing Adam and Kava from the garden and Eloah's sacred commission. Man and woman got evicted, and the east gate got closed up behind them. Then Yahuwah set his guards in place.
Genesis chapter 3, verse 24. And he drove the man out, and he lodged the cherubims at the east of the Garden of Eden, and the flaming sword whirling around to guard the way of the tree of life.
This move away from the east continued with the advancement of the human race.
Genesis 11, 1 and 2. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there.
The east gate that opens into the Garden of Moed is reflected in the east gate of the tabernacle courtyard, where the sacrifices were made. And perhaps this is why the sacrifices were brought to the east gate to begin with, as it was the gate in which man was removed from the presence of Yahuwah. The tabernacle, like the Garden of Eden, is where Yahuwah dwells. Like the garden, the tabernacle is oriented east. And just as Eden was prepared to reflect the Moed of Yahuwah, so too were the Hebrew wilderness camp, the tabernacle, and later the temple. Moses used the Egyptian pi cubit for the construction of the tabernacle and its courtyard. Its measurement is equivalent to 18.262 inches in modern dimensions. When we take into consideration the size of the east gate, as described in Scripture, being 20 cubits, and multiply that by the 18.262 inches, we get the sum of 365.24 inches. Now this number reflects what, honey?
Reflects the exact number of days of in the solar year.
Right. Thus the east gate is representing the beginning of the solar cycle in the east. Now the priests used the solar cycle to number the feast days, as found in the book of Enoch and Jubilees, whereas the creation cycle is used to number the Sabbaths, as blueprinted in Genesis chapter 1. And the moon numbers the sabbatical and jubilee years via the Dead Sea Scrolls. The lights then follow their assignments as given in Genesis 1:14, with the greater luminary numbering seasonal feasts with the vernal equinox solar cycle, the Sabbath days, because creation began with, "Let there be light," and the lesser luminary for numbering the sabbatical and jubilee years, leaving signs to the stars. Now recall, by its very definition, the Garden of Eden is a timepiece for Yahuwah's Moed, whose opening is facing the east compass direction.
Exodus chapter 38, 18 and 19. And the screen of the opening of the court was an embroidery's work, blue and purple and crimson, and bleached twine linen, and 20 cubits long, and the height was 5 cubits in width. And the curtains of the court joining And the pillars were 4, and their sockets 4, of bronze, their hooks silver, and the overlaying of their capitals and their bands were silver.
4 pillars held up the 365.24-inch long east gate screen, just as 4 quarters divide the year as marked by the movements of the sun. The height of the screen was 5 cubits. Now 5 cubits is a very important number in the building of the tabernacle, and that equates to 91.31 inches, the length of a solar quarter. Every 91 days, Enoch tells us that there is a divisional leader replicated with the pillars placed between the quarters. Thus, the tabernacle's east gate is the exemplification of the Creator's priestly festal cycle, which begins on the day the sun rises due east. The Creator told Moses that this was the first day of the year. Now the Holy of Holies was also held up by 4 pillars, each pointing to one of the 4 compass directions, and 4 veils of 20 cubits by 20 cubits made up its walls, or a solar year squared by 4 veils.
1 Kings chapter 6, verse 19. And the oracle he prepared in the house within, to set there the ark of the covenant of Eloah.
Now in verse 19, the word used to describe the Holy of Holies in the Hebrew is debir, translated as oracle, meaning the shrine or innermost part of the sanctuary, the oracle. The Holy of Holies, or oracle, is the speaking place of the Most High. In the Septuagint, the Greek word is debir, G1137, defined as an angle, corner, or quarter, pointing us to the understanding that the 4 pillars were angled to the 4 quarters or compass directions. So staying true to his nature of patterns and circuits, Yahuwah designed the Hebrew wilderness camp to be laid out as a compass, which then in turn can be used as a clock and a calendar, all starting in the east with the setting of Judah.
Numbers chapter 2, 2 and 3. And the sons of Israel shall encamp by their father's house, every man with his own standard, according to the standards. They shall encamp around the tabernacle of the congregation afar off. And those who encamp on the east side toward the sun rising are of the standard of Judah's camp, according to their armies, the ruler of the sons of Judah being Nahshon, the son of Amminadab.
After the tribes of Judah set their banner marking the due east point, the eastern quadrant is then filled with the tribes of Issachar and Zebulun, thus dividing the eastern portion of the camp into 3 sections. Next, the tribe of Reuben enters, marking the southern compass point. The southern quadrant under Reuben is filled with the tribes of Simeon and Gad, after which the 5 Levite families set up in the center of the camp, encircling the tabernacle, each family being placed in a specific compass quadrant. Moses and Aaron are placed in the east quad, with Moses' camp marking due east in alignment with the banner of Judah.
Numbers chapter 3, verse 38. And the ones camping according to the front of the tent of the testimony from the east was Moses and Aaron and his sons, guarding the watches of the holy place, for the watches of the son of Israel and the foreigner approaching shall die.
So then in the west enters Ephraim and Manasseh with Benjamin. And lastly, the tribes of Dan enter in the direction of north, with Asher and Naphtali filling out the final quadrant of the camp. Each time the camp moved, they would enter and exit the camp in this order, orienting the camp to the east.
Numbers chapter 10, 5 and 6. And when you blow an alarm, the camps that lie on the east side shall then pull up stakes. And when you blow an alarm the second time, the camps that lie on the south side shall pull up stakes. They shall blow an alarm for their journeys.
In the second year of the Exodus, the Most High instructed Moses to erect the tabernacle on the first day of the year.
Exodus chapter 40, verse 2. On the first day of the month, on the first of the month, you shall raise up the tent of the tabernacle of the congregation. Exodus 26:22. And by the rear of the tent, by the part towards the west, you shall make 6 posts.
The instructions were to set up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month. The first month is the only month that the Most High calls by name, Aviv, or the time of green ears. So in other words, it's spring. And remarkably, the Creator has placed this big, fiery orb in the heavens that rises due east each Aviv, thus establishing the compass points of east and west. So that's the day that east is established. Moses therefore uses the sun that day as a transit level to keep the tabernacle in alignment during its construction. Scriptures tell us that all the parts were prefabricated, thus only needing to be assembled on the new year. Not southeast or northeast, but facing due east with the rear due west.
Hebrews 8, verse 5. Who served the pattern of and shadow of heavenly things, even as Moses was divinely warned, being about to make the tabernacle, where he says, See that you make all things according to the pattern being shown to you in the mount.
Now notice that Yahuwah is telling Moses to use the heavenly pattern when creating the tabernacle. Now that the camp is set up, it can be used to accurately track the movements of the heavens. Now, back in the day, when all this was going on, the Egyptians used the star Deccan constellations to keep time as a new Deccan rises from the horizon in the east every 15 minutes. So what are Decans? Now, Decans are the constellations which surround the main Mazzaroth or zodiac constellations. Now, each main constellation has 3 decans. And I would imagine that the Hebrews brought this knowledge out of captivity with them. And then I can imagine also Moses standing in the heart of the camp looking at the starscape as it ticked past the banners of the tribes. The Most High tells Moses that the day he is to erect the tabernacle is the first day of the new year. This is a calendrical notation pointing to the first day of the year being on the day that the sun rises due east. Enoch gives us a lot of information about how the heavenly clock works, its divisions, and its leaders of time. Throughout, we are given the understanding that timekeeping begins with the east, as exemplified in Genesis 1 and the simple eastern sunrise. Enoch confirms that east is the first part of the heavens that begins the division of days. We can actually overlay the Creator's instructions of the layout of the Hebrew wilderness camp onto the instructions of the division of days as found in Enoch, and see that the Creator did indeed design the Hebrew wilderness camp to reflect his division of days.
Enoch 76, verse 1. And at the ends of the earth I saw 12 portals, open to all quarters of the heaven, from which the winds go forth and blow over the earth. Enoch 76:2. 3 of them are open on the face, which is the east, of the heavens, and 3 in the west, and 3 on the right, the south, of the heaven, and 3 on the left, the north. Verse 3. And the 3 first are those of the east, and 3 are of the north, and 3 after those on the left, of the south, and 3 of the west.
Enoch is telling us that from the east the sun moves north until it reaches the summer solstice, and then back to the south for the winter, hitting west on its way at the fall equinox. The camp layout consisted of 12 tribes with 3 tribes in each quadrant, starting with the direction of east, mirroring the 3 sections of the quadrants of time that Enoch describes.
Enoch 77:1-3. And the first quarter is called the east, because it is the first, and the second the south, because the Most High will descend there. Yea, there is quite a special sense will he who is blessed forever descend. And the west quarter is named the diminished, because there all the luminaries of the heaven wane and go down. Verse 3. And the fourth quarter, named the north, is divided into 3 parts, and the first of them is for the dwelling of men, and the second contains seas of water, and the abysses, and the forest, and the rivers, and darkness and clouds, and the third part contains the garden of righteousness.
Therefore, according to Enoch, the directions in order are east, because it is first, south, where the Most High will descend, west, the diminishing lights, and north contains creation and the garden of righteousness. Now note that this garden of righteousness is not the same as the Garden of Eden, and we will get deeper into that when we get into the north. Enoch explains that the compass points are the mechanism which separates the quarters, and each quarter is divided into 3 parts, or gates. These are the gates of the months, for each of the 4 quarters. We are given the names of these leaders between the quarters in Enoch chapter 82. When the first 2 wilderness camp quadrants are laid out, east and south, we find that the birth order of the sons of Jacob align with the 6 sun gates, as described in Enoch chapter 72. Hence, the 12 tribes and the 12 monthly gates are divided into the 6 sun gates.
Enoch 72:3-5. And I saw 6 openings through which the sun rises, and 6 openings through which it sets. The moon also rises and sets through the same openings, and they are guided by the stars, together with those whom they lead. They are 6 in the east and 6 in the west heaven. All of them are arranged one after another in a constant order. There are many windows both to the left and the right of these openings. First there goes out the great light, whose name is the sun. Its roundness is like the roundness of the sky, and it is totally filled with light and heat. Verse 5. The chariot on which it ascends is driven by the blowing wind. The sun sets in the sky in the west, and returns by the northeast in order to go to the east. It is guided so that it shall reach the eastern gate and shine in the face of the sky.
The sun is leaving the southern quadrant, where it hangs out in the winter from the northern hemisphere's perspective, and is heading to the east as spring is coming. In order to make this trip in the heavens, the sun must move in a northeastern direction. Now, some translations of Enoch say that the sun returns by the north and not northeast, or I've seen it worded as through the north. So it's not actually moving through the north. It's moving northerly through the south. But it's moving in a northeastern direction. And we always have to remember that the written needs to align with what is physically happening in the sky. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of chaos. And Enoch wouldn't be telling us something opposite than what physically happens. So the sun is not, though, officially in the north until the summer solstice, where it marks the northern compass direction. So that is the day that north is established at the summer solstice. So from our perspective here in the northern hemisphere, the sun is in the south on the last day of the year. This is why the birds go south for the winter, because that's where the sun is. And it's continuing its movement northward as it hits the midpoint in the heavens, marking the compass point of east at the vernal equinox with its due east rising.
In this manner it rises in the first month through the major gate. It proceeds through this gate, which is the fourth among the 6 openings which are located in the direction of the east. By this fourth gate, through which the sun rises during the first month, there are 12 open windows, from which a flame flows when they are opened at the appropriate time.
So Enoch is talking about the 12 months being opened at their set appointed times.
Enoch 72 verse 8. When the sun rises in the east in the sky, it goes out through this fourth gate for 30 mornings and descends faithfully through the fourth gate in the western sky.
Okay, so we see what Enoch is saying here. When the sun rises east, so it's talking about the sunrise and its due east position. This is when it goes through the fourth gate at its rising due east. So we're in that fourth gate. We're at that fourth gate. For 30 mornings, it descends faithfully. So from the point of its due east rising, Enoch is telling us to start counting 30 days. Now, some people will tell you that, it's got to be the next day because we have to make sure it's fully in the gate before we start counting. Totally ignoring what Enoch is telling us, that when the sun rises due east, that is the fourth gate. That's the beginning of the fourth gate. So there's no waiting for it to be in for the next day, because that is the day. And then we'll go on to Enoch 72:9. It says, during those 30 days, the day daily becomes longer and the night nightly shorter for 30 days. Because it's springtime and we're working towards the longest day of the year, which is the summer solstice, where north is established. So the rising sun in the east is a powerful metaphor for renewal and the dawning of Elohah's mercies. Lamentations chapter 3 verses 22 and 23 captures this sentiment. Because of Elohah's loving devotion, we are not consumed, for his mercies never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The daily sunrise from the east serves as a reminder of Yahuwah's unending faithfulness and the promise of new beginnings. The fulfillment of first Adam's ejection from the garden through the east gate. At the end of days, the second Adam will return through the east gate and have communion with his Father. Now, Ezekiel mirrors the heavenly east gate with the earthly east gate, which only the Prince Messiah may enter through.
Ezekiel 44, 1-3. And he brought me back by the way of the gate of the outer sanctuary, facing east, and it was shut. And Elohah said to me, this gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and a man shall not enter by it, because Yahuwah the Elohah of Israel has entered by it, so it shall be shut. As for the prince, as prince he shall sit in it, to eat bread before Yahuwah. He shall enter by the way of the porch of the gate, and by his way shall go out.
So this return of the prince, that is, the Son of Righteousness, the S-U-N, Son of Righteousness, in the east is patterned after the sun arriving at the heavenly east gate, which marks the return of the bridegroom at the time when the measuring line goes out. And one reason why we believe that the Messiah will return at the vernal equinox.
Ezekiel 43:1-2. And he made me go to the gate that faces eastward. And behold, the glory of Eloah of Israel came from the way of the east. And his voice was like the voice of many waters, and the earth shone from his glory. Psalms 19:1-3. The heavens declare the glory of Eloah, and the firmament, the stability of the heavens, announces the making of his hands. Day to day bubbles up a saying, and night unto night announces knowledge. There are no speeches nor words which their voices are not heard.
All tongues can understand the Creator's marks in the heavens. Psalms 19:4 tells us that their measuring line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. And he put his tent, his tabernacle, in the sun. Now, I always thought that was an interesting scripture. Because first we see that the sun has a measuring line. A measuring line, like a plumb line, must be straight in order to get an accurate measure. East is where we find the straight line shadow on the morning of the due east rising of the sun. The heavens do not teach men audibly, or by speaking into their ears, but visibly by presenting things for their eyes to see. They give forth no literal words, but yet their instruction is clear enough to be so described, projecting precious teachings that the heavens speak by their significant actions and operations.
Ezekiel 47:3. When the man went out eastward, and the line in his hand, he measured 1,000 cubits. Job 38:5. Who established the measures of it, if you know? Or who is the one bringing a measuring cord upon it?
And secondly, our Creator set a tabernacle for the sun. Now David poetically described the nighttime sky as a dwelling place, a tent or a tabernacle for the sun. And although the sun comes out of his tabernacle every day to cross the heavens and then return to his tabernacle at night, one day a year the measuring line goes out from the nuptial chamber to mark the start of the sun's yearly trek across the heavens as a strong man running a journey.
Psalm 19:5-6. And then the sun, as a groom going forth from out of his nuptial chamber, shall exult as a strong man running a journey. His going forth is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end, and naught is hidden from its heat.
This phrase, going forth, in Hebrew is mosta, meaning the dawn, the east, a gate, the rising sun, that which comes out. So here we have the rising east sun at the gate. So twice a year, the sun rises aligned with the Earth's equator, one day in the spring and one in the fall. As a result, the shadows cast that day are straight and not bent like other days of the year. Now, King Solomon speaks of these shadows in Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes 7:11-13. Wisdom is good with an allotment and an abundance to the ones viewing the sun. For wisdom in its shadow is as the shadow of silver, and the advantage of the knowledge of wisdom will restore to life the one having it. Look at the work of Eloah, for who can make that straight which he has bent?
Solomon is telling us that there is an abundance of wisdom to be had by viewing and understanding the shadows of the sun, and this knowledge will restore life to the ones having it. I guess you could say that we are witnesses of that.
Mm-hmm.
And although the straight shadow is a result of this alignment, many who are searching for calendrical understanding put the cart before the horse by making the shadow the sign and not understanding that it is merely a byproduct of the due east rising sun, the true heavenly sign. So why is this a problem? Because the sun is so large that a straight line shadow will start forming about 6 hours prior to the sun being exactly aligned with the Earth's center. For 3 years, this straightening begins to form in the evening after sundown and cannot be seen. Therefore, the dewy sunrise is on the Gregorian day of March 20th. Now, Enoch explains this exact movement of the sun at the end of chapter 72, where he gives us the fractional equations of the portions of light and dark that fall across the face of the planet. And when we get to the last or 12th month, Enoch says that on the last night of the 12th month, the sun moves from the south, going in a northerly direction into the due east center position. This alignment then making the shadows 9 parts and 9 parts, in Enoch's words. So in other words, the light and darkness are split evenly, that because equinox means equal night. Nox is night. Now I know some people try to use the equilux, but here Enoch is telling us that it is the last night that becomes equalized with the following day, because the last day is already passed before Enoch tells us that the night becomes equalized. So that night becomes equalized. Now, if it was the day that was becoming equalized, then that would be the equilux, because lux means day. But he's telling us to use the nox, the equal night. And then the following morning, the first day of the year, we get that due east sunrise. So the 12th month, as described by Enoch, says,
Enoch 72:31, on that day the sun, departing from the second gate and setting in the west, returns to the east and rises through the third gate for 31 days, and sets in the western sky.
Okay, so we can see that the sun rises for 31 days, which is telling us that this is the last quarter of the year, the last month in the quarter, because it has the extra divisional day.
Enoch 72 verse 32, on that day the night shortens and becomes 9 parts, and the day 9 parts. Then the night becomes equal with the day, and the days of the year add to exactly 364 days.
So the night that becomes equalized is the 364th night. And the following day is the equal half of that, the lighted part, because we were equalized that night to the following day, the first day of the year. So then after the 31st day comes to an end, and the night, like I said, becomes 9 parts to become equal with the following day, then that would be the first day of the new month, where we see in chapter 72, verses 6 through 9, the sun rising in the face of the sky. Now, the written words of Enoch have to match, as I said earlier, the physical movements of the heavens. And the problem is that many people try to extrapolate what Enoch is saying without taking time to watch and understand how the heavens actually move. And they get confused then with the language because they don't even really know how the sun is moving. They're trying to make it work on paper, but in the physical, it doesn't match. So where the problem lays is in the 4th year, the year of the leap day sign. The sun's casted shadow line will start to straighten before sundown on the 19th of March, thus officially marking the 19th as the vernal equinox according to man's definition. Yet it is still the following morning where we will see the heavenly sign of the due east sunrise, where it projects the straight line shadow. So even though on the 19th, every 4 years, the line starts to straighten around sundown, so just before the sun goes down, we start seeing a straightening. But our sign that we need to look for is that due east rising. And then on the morning of March 20th, we still have the due east rising. And so it's always going to be on March 20th, at least for our lifetime. Unless we get slammed by a big asteroid or something and knocks
more sin,
gets the Earth knocked way out of its orbit and off its axis. Or we could just, flip our poles and that'll be exciting, huh?
Still know where the due east rising is.
Right. And that is a good thing about Yahuwah's big fiery orb in the sky, because regardless of how many days are added to the original 364 days, we always do have that marker in the sky. So, but Yahuwah blessedly gave us this sign so that we would never lose the 7th-day Sabbath. And it's the sign that establishes the compass point of east. So it's always that projected measuring line, as mentioned in Psalms 19:4, that we want to watch for with the sign. That's that's the sun's
the measuring line
sign. That's right. That's the gift it was given on the 4th day of creation. So our Creator is not an author of confusion and would not have us guessing as to when to start counting out his set time moed, his moedim. I mean, he said, you count 14 days to the Passover, and you count 7 sevens to the Shavuot. So he wouldn't just leave us guessing on how to do that. And he would give us a mark in the sky where we would begin these countings. And just as Enoch said, when the sun rises in the east in the sky, then we start counting 30 mornings. East, therefore, becomes the exemplification of new beginnings. The East is often depicted as a place of divine encounters and revelations. The prophet Ezekiel describes a vision of the glory of Yahuwah coming from the East, signifying the return of Eloh's presence to the temple and the restoration of Israel.
Ezekiel chapter 11, 22 and 23. Then the cherubs lifted up their wings, and the wheels were beside them, and the glory of Eloah of Israel was over them from above. And the glory of Yahuwah went up from the midst of the city, and stood on the mountain which is on the east of the city.
In eschatological contexts, the East holds prophetic significance. Yahshua speaks of his return as being like lightning that comes from the East and is visible even in the West, emphasizing the sudden and unmistakable nature of his second coming.
Matthew 24, verse 27. For as lightning comes forth from the east and shines as far as the west, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man.
The East marked the arrival of the Messiah at his birth, as we read in Matthew 2, verses 1 and 2. Now after Yahshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east of Jerusalem, saying, Where is he born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east, and have come to worship him. Interestingly, the Messiah is also called the morning star. In the heavens, the morning star is a reference to Venus, who is seen part of the year as a morning star in the east, and the other part of the year as an evening star in the west. Venus is a part of the end of days prophecy made by Peter. Peter writes of Venus, "We also have a more sure word of prophecy, to which you do well to take heed, as to the light that shines in the dark place until the day dawns." This light in the dark place is Hesperus, the evening star, and the morning star, Phosphorus, arises in your hearts. 2 Peter 1:19. Here Peter speaks of both Hesperus, the evening star, and Phosphorus, the morning star, together, which is Venus, as a sign of the return of the Messiah. Now, Job speaks of Hesperus as well, but for the sake of staying on subject, I will recommend that you watch our study called The Time Machine, where we really talk a lot more about the divineness of some of these directions. Biblical prophecies frequently employ the east as a symbol. Revelations of divine interventions, divine judgment, and divine promises all are intimately tied with the east. In the book of Zechariah, chapter 14, verse 4, the prophet mentions, quote, "On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem," unquote, prophesying the coming of the Messiah, whom Malachi calls the Son, the S-U-N, of righteousness.
Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. But to you who fear my name, the Son of righteousness shall rise up, and healing will be on his wings, and you shall go out and frisk like calves of the stall.
The East, in biblical terms, is a multifaceted symbol encompassing both humanity's estrangement and redemption. It is where we find the entry into the dwelling place of Eloah, the Garden of Moed, the place of his division of days. So this brings to mind a study that I may have mentioned before that was sent to me to watch, where the presenter is teaching that north is first, and for whatever reasons that I'm not going to analyze here, this was their contention, that since Mount Zion is in the north, also the dwelling place of the Most High, then here is proof that north is first. The way I see it is that Yahuwah associates the due east rising sun to the Messiah, and we can't get to Mount Zion in the north unless we go through the Messiah first in the east.
John chapter 14, verse 6. Yahshua said to him, I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 10:9. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and he will go in, and will go out, and will find pasture.
So therefore, the functions of the east are 1. The opening to the garden where the divine council meets. 2. Marks the new priestly festal year. 3. The camp was set starting in the east and was used as a compass, clock, and calendar. 4. The east gate of the courtyard where the sacrifices were made was equivalent to 365.24 inches by the cubit, which exemplifies the solar year. 5. The temple was oriented to the east. 6. The Son of Man comes from the east, and his star was seen in the east at the time of his birth. And 7th, Enoch says, east is first.
7th from Adam.
Now, Enoch told us that after east is the right hand, or south. The south in the Bible encompasses a rich tapestry of geographical, political, and symbolic meanings. It serves as a backdrop for significant biblical events and prophecies, reflecting the diverse and dynamic nature of the biblical narrative. Directions are paramount in navigational, agricultural, and military strategies. The South's position in this regard had substantial importance. It was revered due to its connection with warmth and sunlight, crucial elements for crop growth. Being opposite to the North, which was historically associated with cold winds and winter, also made the South a notable direction. The Bible uses south as a symbol for divine direction or intervention. Example of this is found in several Psalms where south or the right hand was used interchangeably to refer to the side of favor, mercy, or strength. This builds on the belief that the right or south is the side of honor, power, and righteousness. In the biblical narrative, it is through the southern kingdom of Judah that springs forth the Messiah, and the northern kingdom is scattered, and they are the lost sheep of Israel that the Messiah came to retrieve. Now, the land of the south, as in Genesis 24, verse 62, signifies divine light and the light of intelligence, which is wisdom.
Genesis chapter 24, 62 and 63. And Isaac was traveling over through the wilderness by the well of the vision, and he dwelt in the land towards the south. And Isaac came forth to meditate in the plain towards afternoon.
Now, in the book of Ecclesiastes, King Solomon makes a reference to the wind that blows to the south and goes around to the north. Here, the south is understood as an intelligent seeker that knows when to cycle back to gather more knowledge. The wind's movement signifies the cyclic pattern of gaining wisdom, a journey towards spiritual growth.
Ecclesiastes chapter 1, 5 and 6. And the sun rises, and the sun goes down, and it draws unto its place. In its rising it goes forth to the south, and it circles to the north. The wind circles, circling, and at its circuits the wind returns.
Interestingly, the winds are following the path of the sun. The sun rises in the east and goes down in the west, where it draws into its place, its nightly chamber, as described in Psalms 19, going forth into the south as far as it can at the winter solstice, before swinging around towards the north for the summer solstice. With the movement of the sun in mind, let's take a look at Ezekiel.
Ezekiel 40, verse 2. In the visions of Eloah he brought me into the land of Israel, and made me rest on a very high mountain, and it was as the structure of a city on the south.
And from this vantage point he was shown a man in the east, who takes measure of the east gate. In the heavens, the sun is preparing to enter on the first day of Aviv from the south on the last day of winter, as we've already discussed. And recall that the east gate measures 1 solar year. Throughout the Bible, the south wind is often mentioned in relation to the bringing of abundance, growth, and life. It's seen as a beneficial wind that brings favorable conditions for crops to flourish and for the earth to yield its fruits. This symbolism can be found in various passages, such as in the book of Job, where the south wind is described as bringing rain and prosperity.
Job chapter 37, 16 and 17. Do you know the balance of the clouds, the wonderful works of him who is perfect in knowledge? You, whose garments are warm when the earth is still from the south wind.
Additionally, in the Song of Solomon, the south wind is associated with the arrival of spring, a season of renewal and new beginnings. The maiden speaks here of the garden imagery and thoughts of gentle south winds releasing and carrying the fragrance of her garden. In this, she is asking symbolically that the beautiful fragrance of her preserved, protected chastity, now ready to be yielded to her beloved, be released on the warm winds in the spring of their love. Overall, the south wind represents a divine force that brings blessings and sustenance to the land, emphasizing the importance of nature's cycles and Eloh's provision. The south wind is the Ruach HaKodesh, who is compared to the wind because it blows freely and as it pleases, when, where, and on whom, imperceptibly, powerfully, and irresistibly, as we read in John 3:8. The south wind is a warm wind, bringing serenity and making fruitful the showers of rain, so the Ruach HaKodesh warms the cold heart of a sinner, thaws his frozen soul, and comforts the discoveries of divine love, bringing quietness and peace into the conscience, by causing the rain of Yahweh's word to descend and distill upon men. Spiritually, the south wind symbolizes Yahweh's favor, purification, renewal, guidance, and transformation through the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. Job speaks of the chambers of the south as an important aspect of the cosmos.
Job chapter 9, verse 9. Who made the bear, Orion, and Pleiades, and the chambers of the south?
In the south we find Canopus, the great star of the south, called as such because it is the brightest star in the southern hemisphere, only outshined by Sirius. Found in the constellation of Carina, the keel of the now divided constellation Argo Navis, the great ship of Jason and the Argonauts. Canopus is an important navigational star for those on the open seas. In the book of Enoch, chapter 82, we are given the names of the angelic star leaders over the heavenly portions of time. Among them is the name Keel. It is the leader over the first sun gate, which opens in the last third portion of the third quarter, and the first portion of the fourth quarter in the south. It is in this gate where the winter solstice is located. Like the keel of a ship, the first sun gate acts as the southern backbone of the heavens, where the sun comes around bringing life within the south winds. Ezekiel also has a rather strange visionary conversation with the Creator that is rich with symbolism, pointing to the turn of the year and the natural movements of the heavens. Ezekiel 47 verse 1. And he made me turn back to the opening of the house. Now note that this is the winter house by definition. H1004. And behold, water came out from under the threshold of the house eastward, for the face of the house is east. And the water came down from under the right side of the house, at the south of the altar. So in this vision, Ezekiel is seeing a winter house where water is coming down from the south side of the altar to begin its eastern circuit. Ezekiel 47:8, and he said to me, these waters go out toward the eastern circuit, and go down into the Arabah. Now, Arabah means the desert wilderness, and enter the sea. They are brought out into the sea, and the waters shall be healed. Verse 9, and it shall be that every living soul which swarms in every place, there where the two torrents go, that soul shall live. And there shall be a very great multitude of fish, because these waters shall come there, and they shall be healed, and all shall live where the torrents go. Now we, as overcomers, are the many fish. Now this word torrents, the Hebrew 5158, nakal, means a stream, especially a winter torrent. By implication, a narrow valley in which a brook runs, brook, flood, or river. So again, this points to the time of winter. Ezekiel 47:10, and the fishermen shall stand there from En-gedi unto En-eglaim. It will be for a refreshing of dragnets. It will be by itself, and its fishes will be as the fishes of the great sea, and exceedingly great multitude. This vision is pointing to the Messiah, the fisher of men, arriving through the east, and his healing waters flowing from the south. Just as the warm south winds warm the earth in the last days of winter, marking the approach of spring as the sun moves into the east. In Ezekiel 47:1, I noticed that he was made to turn back and return to the east door. It is at the solstices where the sun turns back and heads back to the east door center, or the equinox point, once again. Ezekiel is told that the great number of fish will live where the torrents go. In verse 8, we see that the waters move in an eastern circuit. Ezekiel once again confirming that all things start in the east. Verse 10 said that the fishermen will stand from En-gedi to En-eglaim. Now, En-gedi means the fountain of a kid, from the Hebrew 1423, which means a young goat or kid. Also named in Enoch chapter 82 is the angelic star leader Gediel, or Gediel, meaning kid, goat of El, the kid of El. And it is the last winter gate in the south, or what Enoch calls the third sun gate, which the sun passes through before returning to the vernal equinox point. In the winter, we find the sun in Capricornus, whose alpha star is named Gedi, the kid, located right in the horn of the sea-goat. In Eglaim, meaning fountain of the two calves, celestially, the two calves can only bring us to the famous Little Dipper asterism in the constellation Ursa Minor. The two stars, Kokab and Firkad, were seen as two calves because they keep as close to the pole star Polaris as calves to their mother. They mark the outer part of the cup of the Little Dipper, continually circling the pole star in the north. Kokab and Firkad are often called the guardians of the pole. Hence, Ezekiel 47:10 is telling us that the fisher of men will stand from the south to the north, spreading his dragnet, at the same time pointing us to the circuit of the sun as it moves from the winter in the south to the east at the start of the year. Biblically, the move towards the south often signals a transformation, as observed in the journey of Abraham from the north to the south, and the transformation he went through during that journey. A southward move can be seen paralleled to spiritual growth, moving from ignorance to knowledge, or from spiritual coldness to the warmth of faith. Geographically, in the Bible, the South is frequently associated with the Negev, a desert region in southern Israel. The Negev is a semi-arid area that extends from Beersheba to the Sinai Peninsula. It is mentioned in several biblical passages as a place of travel and settlement. For instance, Genesis 12:9 states that then Abraham journeyed toward the Negev, indicates its role as a significant area in the patriarchal narratives. The name Negev means dry land in Hebrew, but the Bible sometimes uses the term to refer to the South Country or South. During much of the 40-year wilderness wanderings, the Hebrew people camped around the oasis of Kadesh Barnea in the southern part of the Negev. We read about that in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verses 19 and 46. The Negev was included in the lands that the people of Israel were to possess. When the Israelites spied out the promised land, Moses instructed the scouts to head northward through the hill country, starting in the southlands of the Negev. We read about that in Numbers 13, verses 17 through 20. And the semi-nomadic Amalekites also lived in the Negev. We read that in verse 29. Now, symbolically, the South can represent a place of testing and reliance on the Most High. The harsh conditions of the Negev desert required faith and dependence on divine provision, as seen in the Israelites' wilderness wanderings. Deuteronomy 8:15 describes the wilderness as a vast and dreadful desert, a thirsty and waterless land, with its venomous snakes and scorpions. Prophetically, the South is sometimes used to denote future judgment or blessing. In Ezekiel 20, verses 46 and 47, the prophet is instructed to set your face towards the south and prophesy against the forest land of the Negev, symbolizing impending judgment.
Ezekiel chapter 20, 46. Son of man, set your face the way of the south, and drop a word toward the Negev, and prophesy against the forest of the field of the Negev. Verse 47. And say to the forest of the Negev, hear the word of Yahuwah. So says Eloah, Yahuwah, behold, I will kindle a fire in you, and it will eat up every moist tree and every dry tree among you. The glowing of the flame shall not be put out, and by it shall be scorched all the faces from the Negev to the north.
Conversely, Isaiah 21, 1 through 10 uses imagery of the desert to convey messages of both doom and hope. The south of Israel was the wilderness, a region where life does not prosper.
Isaiah 30, verse 6. The burden of the beast of the south into the land of trouble and constraint. The lioness and the lion are from them, the viper and the fiery flying serpent. They carry their riches on the shoulders of young asses, and their treasures on the humps of camels, to a people who cannot profit them.
Joshua led the people of Israel in military conquest of the lands of Negev, taking control away from the native inhabitants, as we read in Joshua 10, verses 40, chapter 11, verses 16, and chapter 12, verses 8. Eventually, the region was allotted to the tribe of Judah and Simeon, as read in Joshua 15, 19, and Judges 1. The south, particularly the Negev, was the crossroads for trade and travel in the ancient world. Caravans traversed this region, connecting Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean, This strategic location made it a valuable and contested area throughout biblical history. So the South symbolizes both challenges and divine assistance, often associated with desolation and spiritual barrenness. But on the flip side of that, the South is linked to the right hand, which is associated with divine power and authority. For instance, in Exodus 15:6, the Song of Moses celebrates Yahweh's deliverance of Israel from Egypt, proclaiming, quote, "Your right hand, O Yahweh, is majestic in power. Your right hand, O Yahweh, has shattered the enemy," unquote. Here the right hand of Yahweh symbolizes his mighty power to save and conquer. Similarly, the right hand is often depicted as a place of honor and authority. In Psalms 110 verse 1, David writes, quote, "Eloah said to my master, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet," unquote. David is prophesying the exalted position of the Messiah at the right hand of Eloah, a theme echoed in the New Testament, as read in Mark 16 verse 19 and Hebrews 1 verse 3. The right hand is also associated with judgment and justice. In Revelation 1 verses 16 and 17 we read, "And having in his right hand 7 stars, and a sharp two-edged sword proceeding out of his mouth, and his face shining as the sun in its power. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. And he put his right hand on me, saying to me, do not fear, I am the first and the last." And the statement, having in his right hand 7 stars, denotes possession, and the right hand is the hand of power, so that the Messiah is here represented as possessing these 7 stars for their rule, protection, and guidance. And we read in John 10:28, "Where no one shall pluck them out of my hand." The stars are grasped in his hand to denote that they are his property. Throughout the Bible, the symbolism of the right hand is rich in multifaceted, encompassing themes of power, authority, blessing, protection, skill, and justice. This symbolism reflects the cultural significance of the right hand in the ancient world and underscores its enduring theological importance in the biblical narrative. Therefore, then, the functions of the South are 1. It is at the right hand. 2. It is a place of honor. 3. It is seated by Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, in the first sun gate. 4. It is where the sun turns around on the winter solstice, establishing the direction of south. 5. It is where the warm winds come from, bringing abundance and warmth out of the winter. 6. It is the keel, the backbone of the heavens. And 7. It is a region where life does not prosper, generating a situation for pure reliance on the Most High. So then, this takes us next to the west. The next quarter is west, the diminished. It is the place where the lights go down in the heavens, denoting darkness. Now, west in Hebrew is the word yam, which also denotes the sea or being seaward. As mentioned earlier, the word for east also means past, and seems reasonable to assume that the Hebrew word yam had a connotation of future or destination or even future knowledge. Ancient Israelites viewed the sea as a representation of disorder, contrasting with the land, which was seen as a place of stability and promise. The sea was associated with various mythological creatures and was considered a realm of uncertainty. The Western Sea, which refers to the Mediterranean, serves as a boundary for the promised land.
Numbers chapter 34, verse 6. And as for the western border, you shall even have the great sea for a border. This shall be your west border. Psalm 74:13. You broke the sea by your strength. You burst the heads of sea monsters in the waters. You cracked open the heads of Leviathan. You gave him to be food for the people of the wilderness. You divided the fountain and the torrent. You dried up mighty rivers. The day is yours. The night is also yours. You have established the light and the sun.
Now, Enoch speaks of Leviathan in the sea.
Enoch chapter 60, verse 1 and 2. In the year 500, in the 7th month, of the 14th day of the month, in the life of Enoch, the 14th day of the 7th month is the beginning of Sukkot. In the same parable I saw that the heaven of heavens was quaking and trembling with a mighty tremulous agitation. And the forces of Yahweh, the Most High, and the Malachim, 10,000 times a million, and 10 million times 10 million, were agitated with great agitation. Verse 2. And the antecedent of time was sitting on the throne of his splendor, surrounded by the Malachim and the righteous ones.
Antecedent of time. Some translations write this as head of days. However, the most literal translation of antecedent is going before or preceding. Therefore, this is the one that precedes time, not just the head of days, but one who was here before time began.
Verse 5. Then Michael said to me, What have you seen that has so disturbed you? This day of mercy has lasted until today, and he has been merciful and long-suffering toward those that dwell upon the earth. Verse 6. And when this day arrives, and the power and the punishment and the judgment, which Yahweh of hosts has prepared for those who do not worship the righteous judgment, for those who deny the righteous judgment, and for those who take his name in vain, will become a day of covenant for the elect and inquisition for the sinners. Verse 7. On that day 2 monsters will be parted, one monster, a female named Leviathan, in order to dwell in the abyss of the ocean over the fountains of waters. Verse 8. And the other, a male called Behemoth, which holds his chest in an invisible desert, a spiritual desert, whose name is Dundan, east of the Garden of Eden, wherein the elect and righteous ones dwell, wherein my grandfather was taken, the 7th from Adam, the first man whom Yahweh of hosts created. Verse 9. Then asked the second Malach in order that he may show me how strong these monsters are, how they were separated on this day, and were cast, the one into the abyss of the ocean, and the other into the dry desert.
The male behemoth is placed towards the east. Thus we can make the association that the female Leviathan is in the sea in the west.
Psalm 89:8. O Yahweh, Lo of hosts, who is a strong Loa like you, and your faithfulness is all around you. You rule the pride of the sea. When its waves rise high, you still them.
You rule the pride of the west. When we start understanding the deeper meanings of these spatial directions, we find transcendent knowledge hidden within Scripture. The sea also symbolizes Gentile nations in prophetic writings. Isaiah 60 verse 5, for instance, calls about the wealth of the seas being brought to Jerusalem, pointing towards the inclusion of Gentile nations. Isaiah 60 verse 5. Then you shall see the flow together, and your heart shall fear and be enlarged, because of the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto you. The forces of the Gentiles shall come unto you. So Daniel's vision of 4 great beasts coming out of the sea conveys the rise of Gentile empires.
Daniel chapter 7, 2 and 3. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and, behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another.
The beasts represent the forms of the world power, and the sea represents that out of which they arise, the whole heathen Gentile world. Enoch also tells us that the accursed valley is in the west. Enoch 26, 1 and 2. And from there I went to the center of the earth and saw a blessed place, shaded with branches which live and bloom from a tree that was cut. And there I saw a Kodesh mountain, underneath the mountain in the direction of the east. There was a stream which was flowing in the direction of the north. Again we see an east and north connection with holiness.
Enoch chapter 26, verse 3. And I saw in a second direction another mountain, which was higher than the former. Between them was a deep and narrow valley. In the direction of the latter mountain ran a stream. Verse 4. In the direction of the west, from this one there was yet another mountain, smaller than it, and not so high, with a valley under it, and between them besides another valley, which is deep and dry. Verse 5. The valleys were narrow, formed of hard rocks, and no tree growing on them. Verse 6. And I marveled at the mountains, and I marveled at the valleys, and I marveled very deeply.
Now Enoch 27 brings in the accursed valley, starting with verse 1. At that moment I said, for what purpose does this blessed land, entirely filled with trees, have in its midst this accursed valley? Then Uriel, one of the Kodesh Malachim, one of the holy angels, who was with me, answered me and said to me, this accursed valley is for those accursed forever. Here will gather together all those accursed ones, those who speak with their mouths unbecoming words against Yahuwah, and utter hard words concerning his splendor. Here shall they be gathered together, and here shall be their judgment in the last days. If we put together what we've learned thus far, it is that in the west there is an accursed valley where the final judgment will happen. Within this valley is a sea where the monster Leviathan dwells. The only way through is for Yahuwah to make a way. In the New Testament, the sea metaphorically represents a barrier from Eloah, often symbolizing death or the unknown. In the book of Revelation, the sea is seen as transient, set to disappear. Revelation 21 verse 1 speaks of a new heaven and a new earth where there was no more sea. The absence of the sea in the final vision of New Jerusalem represents a reality where death, separation, and the unknown are no more. In the New Testament, we see a portrayal of the Messiah's divine authority over the sea. In Matthew 8, verses 23 through 27, he rebukes the storm on the Sea of Galilee, bringing calm to the waters, much to the awe of his disciples. At the end of days, we will be given an ark, much like Noah. However, our ark won't be made of wood, but of divine spirit, for it is our Messiah who will carry us over the torrents of chaos called Leviathan, and into the promised land, the kingdom of Zion. Now, we live in Utah, and north of us is a valley desert where a great salt sea is found, and it's called the Great Salt Lake, which gives me an awesome visual for these scriptures. Utah looks a lot like the Middle East, and the Mormons named many towns and areas after biblical places, like the town where we live, the town of Moab. We even have a town called Enoch and Zion National Park. So the West also symbolizes the emergence of powerful entities or empires in prophetic end-of-days literature. Daniel 8, 3-4 describes a ram with 2 horns. Interestingly, one horn grew higher than the other. In verse 20, the archangel Gabriel tells Daniel that the ram with 2 horns represents the kings of Media and Persia. This aspect of the vision is a restatement of what had been revealed about the second beast in the previous chapter. Speaking of this second world-dominating power, Daniel 7 verse 5 says, quote, "It was raised up on one side," unquote. The Persian side was higher than the side representing Media. In modern days, Persia is Iran and Media is, well, the leftist legacy media. Mede is where we get the word media from. So the word Mede is meh, meaning properly interrogative, the what, including how, why, and when. And Median means brawling and contentious, or contention. From the Hebrew 1777, which means to rule, by implication to judge, to strive as at law, contend, execute judgment, judge, minister judgment, plead the cause, at strife, strive. Though if that doesn't describe the media today, I don't know what does. So in Daniel 8, 5-7, a male goat with a large horn between his eyes suddenly arises from the west and smashes both horns of the ram. Today, rising out of the west is a man who suddenly appeared on the political stage. A man whom the DC swamp monsters, Leviathan and Behemoth, fear. And this man rose up while the monster tried to destroy him. The man, once risen, smashes the 2 horns, Iran and the Media. President Trump told reporters that Iran, or Persia, had been dramatically weakened after U.S. strikes he describes as having obliterated its nuclear capability, arguing the operation reshaped Middle East dynamics. And then when it comes to the media, reported from the AP News in December this year, 2025, and I quote, "President Donald Trump's White House is taking on the role of media critic and asking for help from everyday Americans. The White House launched a web portal it says will spotlight bias on the part of news outlets, targeting the Boston Globe, CBS News, and the Independent and the Washington Post in its first 2 media offenders of the week. It is the latest wrinkle in the fight against what Trump, back in his first term, labeled fake news. The Republican president has taken outlets like CBS News and the Wall Street Journal to court over their coverage, and is fighting the Associated Press in court over media access, and has moved to dismantle government-run outlets like the Voice of America. It is honestly overwhelming to keep up with it all and constantly have to defend against this fake news and these attacks, says Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who called the new web portal an attempt to hold journalists accountable. After its debut, the White House asked for volunteers to submit their own examples of media bias. So-called journalists have made it impossible to identify every false or misleading story, which is why help from the American people is essential, Trump's press office said, unquote. Today, the MAGA movement calls President Trump the GOAT, an acronym for the greatest of all time.
Daniel 8, verse 8. Then the he-goat became very great, and when he was mighty, the great horn was shattered, and in its place came up 4 outstanding ones toward the 4 winds of the heavens.
This foretelling is a bit scary for the United States if President Trump is the prophesied GOAT, as we only have 3 years left of his office. Since this is his second term, he isn't eligible to hold office again. Or perhaps it will be during the next 7 golden years 2026 through 2032, created by the actions of Trump that will last beyond his time in office. We spoke about the Trump sign of 2026 in our Tetrad and the Priestly Order End of Days timeline study, and the 7 golden years possibly coming to an end with the comet Apophis, causing the great horn, America, to be shattered by its impact and triggering new kingdoms to rise up out of the chaos.
Daniel 8, verse 9. And out of one of them came a little horn which became very great toward the south and toward the east and toward the bountiful land. 10. And it became great even to the host of heavens, and it caused some of the host and the stars to fall to the ground, and it trampled them. Verse 11. Yea, he magnified himself even to the leader of the host, and the regular sacrifice was taken away by him, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down.
Now Daniel is talking about the Antichrist, which fits right in with the signs in the heavens timeline that Yahuwah set in the stars. It is because of these prophecies that makes it important to understand the significance of these spatial compass directions and how the Creator used them from the creation of the universe to guiding our steps back to Him. It is on the west side of the desert wilderness that Moses spoke to Eloah for the first time on Mount Horeb. Enoch also told us that the west is where the accursed valley is, the place where evil goes to be judged. Now Moses is before this fire in the west that will set him on a journey which would give him the instructions that will guide Yahweh's people through the judgment of the accursed valley to the safety of the kingdom of Zion. Prophetic literature often uses the west in its imagery. In the book of Isaiah, the west is mentioned in the context of Yahweh's glory being recognized universally. Isaiah 59:19 states, So they will fear the name of Yahuwah from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. Not only is west representing the farthest reaches of the earth, indicating the global acknowledgement of Eloh's majesty and power, but also the fear of judgment, whereas the east is where the glory is found, which is the anointed Messiah. The west carries themes of judgment and closure. Notably, the sun setting in the west illustrates the end of an era or a journey, marking a transition. This direction serves as a reminder of accountability for past actions and the future hope of renewal that follows when we reach spiritual Zion in the north. North is where Yahuwah's glory descends with blessings or judgments. We are told that Yahuwah is the great king over all the earth and above all that is divine, whose city is in the north on Mount Zion or in the kingdom of Zion.
Psalm 47:2. For Yahuwah Most High is awesome, a great king over all the earth. Psalm 48:2. Beautiful on high, the joy of all the earth is Mount Zion, in the sides of the north, the city of the great king.
Enoch tells us that north is last. The north is established at the summer solstice, where the sun turns around in the 6th sun gate, and the shadows begin to grow longer, as described in Enoch chapter 72. Now it may seem strange that the second quarter in time would be the last direction point in the Creator's compass. Yet we find this backward motion throughout Enoch in association with the stars, as it is the stars that move counterclockwise, keeping track of the ages of time. The angelic star leader over the north is called in Ethiopic Zelbazel, transliterated as Zelebzael. Many of the star names in this book bear recognizable Aramaic names. For example, Burka-El, the lightning of El, and Nar-El, the light of El. However, there is no real clear meaning for the name Zelebzael in Aramaic or Hebrew. So let's break down the parts that make up the whole and see what we can glean from this name in the north. First is Ze, Z-E, and that means this or that. Leb is heart or mind. Sa, S-A, is just used as a preposition in the word of, and El is God. So hence the simplest meaning would be this heart and mind of God, or of El. And then Zel, Z-E-L, in Aramaic, is associated with the concept of shadow or shade. It is derived from the root word that conveys the idea of sending or casting a shadow. The term is often linked to the Hebrew word tzel, which also means shadow. In biblical contexts, it may refer to places or concepts associated with protection or covering, as we find in the north with the kingdom of Zion. Now the word ba, B-A, ba, in Hebrew primarily means to come or to enter. It can also imply a sense of arrival or movement towards a place. It is used to express the action of coming or arriving. Therefore, the protection of El that comes from the north. Interestingly, it is in the third month where we find the sixth sun gate, out of which comes the protection of El, and it is in the third month where we find Shavuot, the celebration of the giving of the Torah. This is the time of the betrothal for the bride, for the ecclesia, and her betrothed symbolically and legally covers her with his tallit of protection, as we read in the story of Ruth and Boaz. Now we also believe that on this day of the giving of the Torah is the day that the Messiah was born, as he is the Torah and also fits within scriptural context. You can see our study on when was the Messiah born after you're done watching this. So recall that Enoch also told us that the Garden of Righteousness was in the north. So just what is this garden? Just as mountains can be symbolized as kingdoms, the concept of the garden holds profound symbolic significance throughout the Bible, representing themes of paradise, provision, intimacy with the Most High Eloah, and spiritual growth. From the Garden of Eden in Genesis to the imagery of gardens in the prophetic and poetic books like the Songs of Solomon, the garden serves as a powerful metaphor for Yahweh's intimate relationship with humanity and his divine plan. In the Song of Solomon, the garden imagery is used to depict love and intimacy. The beloved is often compared to a garden, symbolizing beauty, fertility, and delight. This imagery conveys the idea of a cherished and protected relationship, reflecting the intimate bond between Yahuwah and his people. As described in the Jewish Encyclopedia, Jewish text tells of two gardens, one heavenly and the other earthly. The earthly garden, or lower Gan, is where Adam and Chava lived. The lower Gan, or lower garden, is filled with lush vegetation, while the heavenly, or the higher Gan, is where righteous, immortal souls live. The Garden of Righteousness, as mentioned in the book of Enoch, is a sacred place located in the north. It is depicted as a beautiful and fragrant garden, symbolizing a divine paradise reserved for the righteous. This garden is associated with the tree of life, which is said to provide life to the chosen ones after the final judgment. The garden in the east of Eden is also associated with the tree of life. The east gate into this garden is where the second Adam will enter and gather those who were given to him by his Father, and bring them to the second garden, the kingdom of Zion in the north.
Enoch chapter 24, verse 1. From there I went to another place of the earth, and he showed me a mountain of fire which was flaming day and night. Verse 2. I went in its direction and saw 7 dignified mountains, all different, one from another, of precious and beautiful stones, and all dignified and splendid in respect to their visualization, and beautiful in respect to their facade, 3 in the direction of the east, 1 founded on the other, and 3 in the direction of the north, 1 upon the other, with the deep and crooked ravines, each one which is removed from the other. Verse 3. The 7 mountains were situated in the midst of these ravines, and in respect to their heights, all resembled the seat of a throne, which is surrounded by fragrant trees.
Here we see a connection of Yahuwah's throne in the east garden and his throne in the north garden.
Verse 4. And among them there was one tree, such as I have never at all smelled. There was not a single one among those who are other trees, which is like it. Among all the fragrances, nothing could be so fragrant. Its leaves, its flowers, and its wood would never wither forever. Its fruit is beautiful, and resembles the clustered fruits of a palm tree. Verse 5. At that moment I said, This is a beautiful tree, beautiful to view, with leaves so handsome and blossoms so magnificent in appearance. Verse 3. He answered, saying, This tall mountain which you saw, whose summit resembles the throne of Yahuwah, is indeed his throne, on which the Kodesh and great sovereign ruler of majesty, the eternal King, will sit when he descends to visit the earth with goodness. Verse 4. And as far as this fragrant tree, not a single human being has the authority to touch it until the great judgment, when he shall take vengeance on all and conclude everything forever. Verse 5. This is for the righteous and the holy, and the elect will be presented with its fruit of life. He will plant it in the direction of the north and east, upon the Kodesh place in the direction of the house of Yahuwah, the eternal King.
It is the tree of life, then, that is the portal between the two gardens. We are told that we can only get to the Father through the Son. Our journey begins in the east and ends in the north, where we walk through the desert wilderness in the south and the darkness of the west, during which the Son of Righteousness is keeping us under his protective covering through this perilous journey to Mount Zion. In Enoch's vision, the Garden of Righteousness serves as a place of hope and reward for those who follow Yahuwah's commandments. It emphasizes the themes of righteousness, divine judgment, and ultimate restoration of life for the faithful. From his kingdom in the north, Yahuwah has ordained one that will come from the east, who will trample the kings of the earth the way a potter softens clay with his feet. As we know, Hillel wants to sit over the north because he wants to be like Yahuwah and be worshipped by man instead of serve him.
Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 5. And he said to me, Son of man, Lift up your eyes now to the way of the north. So I lifted up my eyes the way of the north, and behold, from the north, at the gate of the altar, was this image of jealousy at the entrance.
Ezekiel was told to look north, and from the north came an image of jealousy to stand at the east gate. It is at the east gate where the altar is. Hence, Hillel will come from the north and want to stand in the place of the Messiah's arrival in the east in order to stop him and replace him as the chosen son. The north is a symbol of the permanent or the eternal. It is the place of Yahweh's celestial dwelling, the northern garden, which are the stars that Hillel wants to sit above.
Isaiah chapter 14, 12 through 14. O shining star, son of the morning, how you have fallen from the heavens. You, weakening the nations, you are cut down to the ground. For you have said in your heart, I will go up to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of Eloah, and I will sit in the mountain of meeting, in the sides of the north. Verse 14. I will rise over the heights of the clouds, and I will be compared to the Most High.
The word mount or har is a shortened form of mountain or harar. Biblically can imply a kingdom and not always a literal mountain. So with that in mind, Isaiah 14 realistically could read, For you, Hillel, have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne, my authority above the stars, the heavenly host of the Creator. I will sit also upon the kingdom of the Creator's moed, the place of the Creator's set times. And recall that the fishermen will stand from Engedi, or the south, to En-Eglaim, the North Star calves, that is, the Big Dipper. This is pointing us to those very stars in the north that Hillel wants to sit his throne above, as was said, above the stars on the side of the north, a heavenly location, not an earthly one. The Big Dipper stars are circumpolar, meaning they circle the pole star and never set, but can only be seen from the northern hemisphere. Because of the Earth's rotation, there is a perpetual clock hanging in the northern sky that pours water of knowledge down upon us. The Big Dipper, of course, is a familiar group of 7 stars that form the shape of a bowl with a curved handle. The 2 stars at the end of its bowl are known as the pointer stars, since they aim towards Polaris, the North Star. As the Earth turns during the night, the Dipper's pointer stars constantly change their orientation relative to the North Star. In fact, we can imagine the stars at the end of the Dipper's bowl as the hour hand of a huge 24-hour clock, handy for telling time by the stars. Step outside on a clear night and locate the Big Dipper and the North Star. Now picture a clock with the North Star at its center and draw an imaginary line starting from the North Star through the 2 pointer stars on the Big Dipper, Dubhe and Merak. Assume that this is the hour hand of your imaginary star clock. The clock you just created in the sky is a 24-hour clock. Unlike on a regular analog clock face, where an hour takes up 30 degrees of a full circle, the imaginary hour hand on the star clock moves only 15 degrees per hour. What's more, this hour hand moves counterclockwise. Now draw another imaginary line straight up from the North Star. This line will mark midnight, or the passing of 24 hours. Once you've figured out how to create an imaginary clock in the sky, you need to do some calendrical calculations and very basic math. Here we go with the math again. So to tell time, look at where the hour hand points in relation to the reference line. Remember, Each 15-degree movement corresponds with the passing of 1 hour. On March 8th, the basic rule involving Polaris and the Big Dipper is as follows. Because we can use March 8th, there's different dates through the year that we can use as markers for the quarterly parts of our clock. So on March 8th, at midnight, or 2400 hours, the Big Dipper is directly over Polaris. 6 a.m., Big Dipper is to the left or west of Polaris. At noon, the Big Dipper would be directly below Polaris. And at 6 p.m., the Dipper is to the right or east of Polaris. Complicating matters, however, is the fact that our celestial clock runs fast by 24 hours each year, because the Earth takes 365 days to travel around the Sun, but a circle only has 360 degrees. So the 365 has to fit in the 360. In order to compensate for this, we have to adjust the 24-hour midnight mark counterclockwise on our celestial clock by around 2 hours per month to give an accurate reading of the time. To be extra accurate, subtract 30 minutes for each week or 4 minutes per remaining day to give the reading within half an hour of accuracy. However, don't forget to add an hour of time if it is daylight savings time. Hillel wanted to set his throne over the Moedim, over the set times of Yahuwah, and this is the place on the sides of the north where we can use the stars in the northern sky to tell time. Mm-hmm. So we have this connection of north and time tied together.
Job 26:7. He stretched out the north over the empty place, and he hung the earth on nothing.
The symbolism of the north in the Bible is multifaceted, representing both the majesty and authority of Yahuwah, as well as the sources of threat and judgment. It serves as a powerful metaphor for divine sovereignty, cosmic mystery, and the consequences of prideful rebellion. Through its varied representations, the North underscores the complex relationship between the Most High and His creation, highlighting themes of power, judgment, and redemption. The North, represented by the left hand, is where the enemy of Yahuwah's people came from, bringing their destruction.
Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 13. And the word of Yahuwah came to pass on a second time to me, saying, What do you see? And said, A kettle being fired up, and the face of it towards the face of the north. 14. And Eloah said to me, From the face of the north shall burn away the evils upon all the ones dwelling in the land. Verse 15. For behold, I call together all the kingdoms of the north, says Yahuwah, and they shall come, and he shall put his throne upon the thresholds of the gates of Jerusalem, and upon all the walls round about, and upon all the cities of Judah. Verse 16. And I shall speak to them with judgment concerning all their evil, as they abandoned me, and they sacrificed to strange Elohim, and did obeisance to the works of their hands.
Ezekiel speaks of Gog, of the land of Magog, coming from the far north to wage war, symbolizing a formidable threat against the people of the Most High.
Verse 14. So prophesy, son of man, and say to Gog, So says Yahuwah Eloah, Shall you not know in that day when my people Israel dwells securely? Verse 15. And you shall come from your place out of the recesses of the north, and you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great assembly, a mighty army.
The enemy was a false king of the north who tried to usurp Yahuwah's role and is finally destroyed by the Messiah. In biblical writings, each compass direction, east, south, west, and north, carries a unique charge of symbolism. This usage is not random, but deeply entrenched in the geographical, cultural, and historical context of the people at the time of these writings. The east is the beginning direction and became the place where Yahuwah intervened on behalf of his people, bringing them salvation. The south is represented by the right hand. The south is the desert wilderness, a region where life does not prosper. To the south was Egypt, which opposed the Most High's power and oppressed his people. To the west of the land was the sea, representing evil and death, and is also the place of diminishing and darkness, because that is where the luminaries set. The north is a symbol of the permanent or the eternal. It is the place of Yahuwah's celestial dwelling, the northern garden, which are the stars that Hillel wants to sit above. North is where Yahuwah's glory descends with blessings or judgments. As we have discovered, the compass directions symbolize divine order and the fulfillment of Yahuwah's purpose. They carry profound theological and symbolic meaning that reflect the Most High's governance over creation and humanity's relationship with the divine. The compass directions often symbolize the spiritual journey of individuals and communities. The act of moving in a particular direction can represent a person's relationship with Yahuwah, their moral choices, and their spiritual growth. They are frequently employed in prophetic literature to convey messages about judgment, restoration, and divine intervention, and thus the reason why it is important to understand their placements. So this is where we're going to end this study today on our biblical compass points. And we hope that this has given you some meat to chew on as we give Yahuwah all praise and glory for the things that he shows us and the direction he leads us. So until we meet again, we're going to wish you
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.